Welcome to the You World Order Showcase podcast. My name is Jill Hart. I'm the founder of The Empathy Edge, and this show is built for up-and-coming life, health, and transformational coaches who are looking to share their coaching journey, grow their practice to change more lives, and be the change they want to see in the world. If you're an up-and-coming coach and would like to be featured on this podcast to talk about your coaching journey, struggles, and success stories, please visit jointheyouworldorder.com, and don't forget to subscribe to get notifications of the daily content. Hi, and welcome to the You World Order Showcase podcast. Today we have with us Maggie Olson, who's from Chaos to Clarity Coaching. She also is a podcast host of Chaos to Clarity podcast. She specializes in empowering ambitious and multi-talented women, entrepreneurs, coaches, consultants, and online course creators to unleash their full potential. Welcome to the show, Maggie. It's really nice to have you here.
Yeah, thank you, Jill, so much. I'm so excited to be here. I've just been anxiously waiting, and I'm just so excited to chat today.
That'll be great. So how did you get started? What's your story?
Oh my goodness. So my story starts long ago. So I've actually been in business for over 17 years. I started when I was young babysitting, and it kind of just grew from there. The entrepreneurial bug grew from there. When I was in college, I studied abroad in Spain. And when I was in Spain, I took thousands of photos while I was there. And growing up, I, monkeyed around with my mom's camera and took all kinds of pictures. I didn't think much of it until I got into college, studied in Spain, and realized, oh, I really love taking photos. So I came home from 6 months abroad, and I told my mom, I said, I want to open a photography business. And she said, great. And how about you finish college? You have like 2 semesters left, right? So I was like, oh, okay. That sounds like a good idea, right? So I finished, and at the time, that was right around 2007. So for everyone in the States, 2007, 2008 was the crazy housing crisis of sorts.
The great debacle.
Right? And not a lot of people were finding jobs. I was lucky enough to get a full-time job from the internship that I had been doing here at home. So I was working full-time in corporate as well as growing my photo business. And then from there, things just really took off. I started having more conversations with people about photos. That continued to grow. I wound up leaving my corporate job. In that time span where I was leaving and going full-time with photography, I started taking yoga classes, fell in love with yoga, became a yoga instructor, started teaching a ton. So I was doing kind of 2 businesses. And that was really awesome for me to support myself as an entrepreneur. And then I got the opportunity to purchase the yoga studio that I trained at. And when I purchased that yoga studio, I thought, oh, this is cool. I don't know how to run a yoga business at all. And something about me is I have a very glass half full, very optimistic, very like, I don't know how to do this thing yet, but I'm going to figure it out anyway. So after purchasing the studio, I then, grew the class list, and I realized I cannot teach 15 to 20 classes a week. It's just not feasible. So I had to start hiring teachers. There were no yoga teachers. So I created a yoga teacher training program, started training teachers. And this is where coaching and my life kind of go hand in hand, is when I started teaching all these women how to be a yoga instructor. Every single person that went through my program, at least in the beginning, always asked, okay, this is great. I know how to teach a class, but like, how do I make money being a yoga teacher? So then I started infusing a lot of like business, like the business of yoga, into that coaching scene, right? Where I was coaching these women, I was helping them, I was giving them the opportunity to really step into their power as a yoga teacher. So then in 2020, when the pandemic started and everything closed down, I realized I didn't want to own the yoga studio anymore. And that thought really scared me. it really scared me because I was afraid of what others would say, the judgments that they would have, and like, oh, she's quitting this now. She was a photographer. She owned a yoga studio. Like, now what is she doing? So as I pivoted from the yoga studio to coaching, I didn't tell anyone that I was a coach for like a year and a half, right? That I had gone into coaching. It was just this like, oh, I'm going to post these things on Facebook and I'm going to hope that, people ask me what I'm doing, and no one really asked, right? So then I was like, how am I supposed to grow a coaching business if nobody's asking? And I realized I haven't told anyone that I'm a coach.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm like, oh, well, okay, first I have to start telling people that I'm a coach. And honestly, I was met with so much just love and acceptance that, I think back to myself a few years ago and I'm like, oh, I really did not have to worry. So when some of those worries start creeping back in for myself, for my clients, I always let them know that like your thoughts are probably worse than what anyone else is thinking. And if they are thinking those things, it's really none of your business. And don't let that, like creep in for you. Um, so I've been full-time coaching since 2020, although I kind of joke and say I've really been coaching since 2016, but truly like stepping into my full like business coaching and having more conversations with people really since 2022 because the pandemic, I didn't tell anyone, we had another baby, I took a maternity leave, and then I decided, okay, I'm ready to like fully take this on and move forward. So it's been a really interesting 17 years. Really, I look back and I'm like, I can't believe all of this stuff has happened for me. Like, I'm so excited for the future, all of the stuff that is happening for me. There's just so much possibility. And I love to really infuse that into my clients as well, right? A lot of the women who are coming to me are in a similar position. Maybe they're leaving corporate, maybe they're pivoting, maybe they're just scared to speak these things into existence. And that is kind of my secret sauce. I really help them learn how to talk from the heart, right? Speak from the heart, talk about themselves in a way that they're like, I'm so excited to tell you this thing. I can't wait for you to come along on this ride with me. Here's some nuggets of information. What other questions do you have? And really kind of like that selling with heart. It's like selling without selling is what somebody said to me the other day. You're so good at selling without selling and just inviting people to come along. So I think that's one of my favorite things about being a coach is that there's just so much possibility for myself, but more importantly for my clients.
And the doors have just blown open as far as possibilities since the pandemic. It's like
Mhm.
it was horrible, but it was the silver lining is that it just exploded the opportunities for everybody to
Right,
really step into being who they were really meant to be. So many times there are people that are trapped in corporate jobs because they did the college route and now they have all this training. The medical profession comes to mind, but
right,
engineers and lawyers and any kind of professional out there that spent tens, maybe even hundreds of thousands of dollars for training to become the professional that they are, and then they're at the mercy, and sometimes they're just locked into having to make a certain amount of money each month, so that they feel like they're trapped in these jobs when there's always a way out.
right.
You just have to be willing to to step into it.
Yeah. A lot of the time, like face the fear kind of comes to mind there. And,
Mhm.
I've had a couple of clients who that was their motto coming in, right? I'm just gonna face the fear and do the thing anyway, which is cool, right? Like, and I definitely have embraced that, but I also remind them like if you're doing things scared, it's probably not gonna work, right? So yes, face your fear, but also and that's really why I call what I do chaos to clarity coaching, because it's facing that a lot of times inner chaos, right? Facing your inner chaos, calming that finding clarity within so that all the outside chaos, it kind of dulls, right? It gets a little bit duller and it's like, okay, this thing isn't really as big. It's big, but it's not like as scary big, right? It's manageable. And yes, I'm going to have to do some things. I'm going to have to take action. I'm going to have to face some of these fears, but it's facing the fear in a way that really allows you to tap into your potential and, more importantly, your possibility, right? The possibility that, like, what if this works for me? And even like, wow, this is working. I'm taking the steps forward, right? Walking into that possibility instead of running scared from fear of like, oh my gosh, what if I don't make this much money this month? Right?
Yeah, and part of it is it's just your whole mindset around how things are or how things could be. And there's you can always downsize to get
Right.
started.
Yep. Yep.
And
Exactly.
you're going to have to make some changes if you're going to change the way things are. You're where you are because of the things, the decisions you've made and the thoughts you've had that have gotten you to this point. But if it's not serving you, then you need to have different thoughts and have a different reality to produce the vision that you set for yourself. And
Right.
I think that's a lot of what you're talking about doing for people.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I feel like mindset is probably 90 to 95% of business.
Mhm.
If you're going in with a scared mindset or fearful mindset, what if this doesn't work? What if I can't do this? That is
You
really
won't.
going, right? Yeah, what you think becomes what happens. And I don't think people realize that until they get into business and they realize, oh, if I shift my thoughts even just a little bit from, what if this doesn't work to what if it's possible that this will work? Even just that little shift can be such a huge movement, when you're starting to go away and move into the realm of like, oh my gosh, this works, right? And you start to see proof that it works because your brain is always looking for proof.
Confirmation bias.
Oh, totally. Absolutely. Right. And if you're telling yourself, I don't know if this is going to work, your brain is going to see all those things like, oh, yep, see that post you just did, nobody's commenting on it. It's not working. Right. Whereas if you're in that land of possibility, that land of like, there is a possibility that this will work. Your brain's going to see, oh my goodness, someone liked your post or someone answered your email. Wow, this is working.
And it helps you to open up to things that are coming along,
Hmm.
opportunities that come along. If you're
Totally.
if you're looking for that confirmation bias, then it's like, oh, and this presented itself. So maybe I should look into that and see how
Hmm.
that fits in with my bigger plan and writing it down. There's a lot of value. There's magic in the written word
Yeah.
by hand. There's
Yep.
just That's why they call it spelling. It's actually from creating with
Right.
words because it's how we make reality happen.
Hmm.
We speak it or write it. And they've done studies where, people that wrote down their goals were like much more likely to achieve them, even
Yeah.
if they did nothing else other than write them down.
Hmm.
Because then
That's amazing.
you start to have things come into your periphery that you can take advantage of that will move you towards the confirmation bias, but also towards being able to have it happen. I'm sure you've experienced this too, where you've talked to people who've created vision boards and then tucked them away somewhere. And
Yep.
then years later, they go back and they go, oh, I've got that. I've got that. I've got that. I've got that. I've got that.
Uh-huh. Yep. Yeah, for sure.
These things actually work in the real realm of how reality works.
Yeah. And I think that's such an amazing part of being an entrepreneur is to, like bear witness to all of these things happening for you in your life. And I mean, Like, I don't want anyone to think I've never had hardships, right? Because I have. There have been a lot of hard things that I've navigated in the last 20 years of my life. Um, but there's been so many amazing things too. And even all of those things that are like, oh, that was really hard, right? Like the one thing that comes to my mind is, closing the yoga studio. As much as I was done with it, especially once all of the pandemic stuff started happening and things were closed, and there was this cycle of like, oh, okay, well, maybe in this length of time we'll be able to open. Nope. And the goal kept getting, pushed back further. I started to realize like I am really tired. I'm really exhausted mentally, physically, emotionally. And I sat with some of those thoughts and I thought, you know what? What if I did close the studio? Like, what would that feel like? What would happen? And what do I want to do if I don't have this yoga studio anymore? Um, and honestly, it was like a weight lifted off of my shoulders, when I was like, I can close it. I can try and sell it. I can also just close it. And I did try to sell it. But the few people who were interested in it, they wanted to know that the studio would bounce back after the pandemic, right? And I'm like, I can't make that kind of promise to
Who
you.
knew?
I yeah, I have no clue how long this is gonna last. So I wound up closing it. And it's kind of like I call it celebrating a death, right? Like closing a business, closing a chapter of a very big part of my life was a lot more. There were so many different stages of grief that I went through after that time. And I was like, I did not expect this to be so emotional. But it was definitely a processing of all the things, right? And I really think that's why, like I didn't tell a ton of people that I was a business coach or that I was, going into coaching after I closed the studio because I needed that time to grieve. I needed that time to like come back to me and what I really wanted. And something not a lot of people talk about is an exit plan for your business.
Yes.
Like I still, it's one of those things that it's like it's on my list of things to do, but I haven't done it yet. And I know that just from the yoga studio, I did not have an exit plan. So when I was trying to put together a list of like what to sell in the studio, I was like, I have no clue. And I think having that exit plan, the more I think about it now, is like, okay, here is what needs to happen if something should happen to me, but also here's what should happen if decide I'm done. Like, what do I want to happen? Because I didn't have that with the yoga studio. I was the one making all the choices, which is fine and good, but I was also making choices kind of rash, right? In like, oh, this has to be done. I have to shut this off. I have to do that. Oh my gosh, there was no checklist. So having that exit plan, even if you never use it, still gives you that peace of mind. Like I have a plan.
It really should be part of your business plan.
Yeah.
Most
Yeah.
people don't have a business plan either, but
Right.
it, you need to have some framework for what you're doing and
Right.
what the whole an idea. It doesn't have to be super concrete, but just a fluid idea of where you are now and where you want to get to, and what is the end. What does the
Mm-hmm.
end look like for you? Because unless you're thinking that you're going to just build an empire, and that's a perfectly good business model, but it's not what most people are thinking they're going to do. And a lot of people that I talk to are coaches, and coaches are generally people who want to help other people solve a problem that they've figured out the solution to themselves. So they go out and they just they just want to help people. They really want to help everybody, which doesn't work either. But um, and and they don't really think about, what do I want my business to look like? How do I want to benefit from my business? How do I want to feel while I'm running my business? And when will I know I'm done with my business? When will I know that I've reached it?
Mm-hmm.
What's the end goal here?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
is it
I
a
think
dollar
that's a
figure?
really right. I think that's a really interesting concept. And it's definitely something that, like I said, an exit plan is on my list of things to do. But I also know that, like, for me, it takes a little while to get into that, like, oh, do I want to think about the end, quote unquote, right? That end space, and give myself the opportunity to really dream, but also the opportunity to be really real with myself and say, okay, here are the points that I think right now could be, that point of like, maybe this is enough, right? What does that feel like? And also the possibility that when I reach those points, maybe I won't be done. And again, the possibility to be like, okay, if I get here and I'm not done, like, let's rethink all of this. So,
Yeah. But there should be off ramps in your plan. You know,
mm-hmm,
when you reach the off ramp, you have the choice. Do I want to get off here? Or do I want to keep going to the next exit?
right.
And it gives you a lot more options, but it also helps you to recognize the choices that come along in the process that you're going through. And it also helps you to figure out where you need help and where you need to shore up your shortcomings in
Mm-hmm,
terms of education. Because it's really easy to learn modalities, we'll call them,
right.
in the coaching world. Um, but and everybody has their own way of putting them together so that they're unique
Mm-hmm,
and they solve a unique problem or set of problems with the way that they use the modalities. And it's kind of like a cafeteria style, but it's like going to college and learning to be, let's say you're learning to be you just go to a training school and you learn to become an electrician, but you don't learn how to put the like how to contact customers or how to um, how to do certain aspects of the job that a person who's a master electrician knows how to do. They know how to do all of the pieces, and it you need training for
mm-hmm,
those things, and you need training to learn how to do all of the pieces for setting up a business and being an entrepreneur. It's not just being a coach and helping your, next door neighbor with whatever their problem is. It's actually setting up a business, having a marketing plan, having a systematic way of finding customers, having a systematic way of communicating with your customers and offering ongoing services and different services that meet their changing needs. You know, it's it's more than just getting certified,
right.
hoping that you're gonna, and more certifications aren't necessarily going to make it any better for you. And I'm really getting around to, that's why you need to hire somebody like Maggie who can help
Right.
you
Yeah.
navigate all these other little pieces.
Right. Yeah. And I would definitely say that, like, something I noticed in the yoga world was that I can't think of any other yoga teacher training that offered business coaching, other than mine.
Mhm.
And it was actually really frowned upon in the yoga community to offer business advice, and or coaching to upcoming yoga teachers. Um, and when I learned that, right? So in the state of Wisconsin, and the only reason that I really kind of dug into that more was because in Wisconsin, if you have a school or like a training, You have to follow state regulations. And those state regulations said that you have to follow whatever governing, quote unquote, governing body there was for whatever you were teaching. So for yoga, that's, Yoga Alliance. And maybe things have changed in the last 4-ish years. But when I was doing that, Yoga Alliance in their thing in all of their stuff said, you could do out of the 200 hours of yoga teacher training, you could do 2 hours of business talk about business for 2 hours. And I was appalled by that because I'm like, I understand that I am teaching these people to teach a yoga class. Yes, but I also really want to empower them to go out and be hireable to other yoga studios. I want them to
To start
know
their
that,
own.
right, start their own studio, be a teacher, I don't care what it is, but know how to figure out what do they ask for pricing? What are workshops they can, help? So in yoga teacher training, I had my students, they learned how to teach two different types of classes. And then they also had a workshop that they created, and then they gave it at my studio so they could have basically a review or a testimonial from me and anyone at my studio to say, hey, this person gave this workshop at my studio. I would gladly recommend them to do this at any studio they are approaching. And, really gave those teachers empowerment to go out and say, here is how much I charge for this. Would you be willing to host me here? Um, and like in the yoga world, that was like, oh my goodness, don't ever talk about business. Don't ever let the people know. But
Or
how are
money.
we? Yeah, yeah. But
God
even
forbid you talk about money.
I know, and that floors me. But I also, and I've taken a couple different like coaching trainings, like learn to coach, whatever. And almost none of them talk about business. And some people that I've connected with, they've said, well, I don't feel comfortable speaking about business. And I'm like, but you have to have please tell me you have a business plan. And I don't think a lot of people do, at least just kind of a general outline of like, here's the plan for the year. Here is what I'm offering. Here's how many people I want to bring in this year. And I don't think people have that. Even in my photo business, I don't think many photographers have a business plan other than go out, sell sessions, and make money, which is okay. But like, how are you ever going to track
What's
your
working and
what's
what's
working,
not.
what's not? Yeah. Yes. So that's why I'm very passionate about helping women figure out, okay, what does work for you? Yes, let's get out of chaos into clarity, but how can we create some goals, some aligned goals? How can we create an action plan and a strategy for you've got these goals? Here's a strategy. There's millions of strategies. Choose one. Let's work on it for more than a week and we're going to see, right? We're going to see what happens. We're going to play, we're going to create, we're going to experiment and
And we're
see,
going to fail. And in the
right?
failure, we're going to learn stuff. And
Yeah.
it's going to make us better. And we're going to
Hmm.
keep failing and we're going to keep failing and we're going to make a fool of ourselves sometimes. But that's how you learn.
Right.
And you can't bypass that step because
Hmm.
you will fail. That
Oh,
it's just
absolutely.
baked into the whole process. But it's not like just because you fail doesn't mean you're done. It just means
Right.
that didn't work. Try
Hmm.
again. And it means you're human and stuff happens.
Right. Right. And I like to remind a lot of my clients that like a lot of my clients are moms.
Mhm.
And I remind them like your baby didn't like learn to walk and never fall down. Yes, some babies stand up and take those first few steps, but I promise you, I can guarantee you that baby has fallen back on its butt at least one time. Um,
They do it
and
all the time.
right. And I think that's important to remember. Like yes, like I think it's a Japanese proverb that says, fall 7 times, get up 8, right? So like you don't have to just because you fell or failed doesn't mean you have to stay there. There is possibility to stand back up, dust yourself off and go, okay, that didn't work how I thought it would. Let's try something new. And it doesn't have to be this like huge 180 of a thing, right? I think people get
Just
mixed up there.
a
Just a
little
little
bit.
bit, right? Like let's just course correct just a little bit. Like I did a free challenge in my group earlier this year. So this is still very like fresh for me, right?
Mhm.
And I started talking about it, and then we were going on vacation and I was like, "Oh no, this vacation is just weird timing." And I'm like, "Okay, I'm still going to do this." And it was kind of like rushed all over the place. And it was still a good turnout for a free challenge, right? There's still a lot of people, but I knew that the metrics that I wanted didn't get hit. And so, it was I guess you could call it a failure, right? Quote unquote, of sorts. But, that allowed me to look at that again and go, okay, let's not plan it right on the heels of a vacation. Let's figure out, look into the future, and like, when do I want to do this again? Because I knew that with a little bit more planning, it will be what I want it to be. um so even for me as a seasoned business coach, right, knowing that I still fail. I think that's important to understand as well.
I think it's important to understand also that there's a difference between failing because something didn't work and something working but not meeting your expectations,
That
which
too.
is kind of what you're talking about, sounds like to me.
Yeah. Well, there was some stuff on the back end, on the tech side that did not work. I forgot a few things and didn't click some of the right buttons in the CRM. So people got sent all of the emails at once, and it was one
Oh
of those
yeah, I
things I
love
was like,
those things.
"Oh, oh, cool. Yay. Sorry. Better luck
I
next time."
did that just today. Last week, I do these deep dive lives in our community, and last week I didn't go live anywhere. And this week I went live on my profile instead of in my group. It's just like,
Oh,
stuff happens.
it does. It
You just got to
does.
roll with it.
Yep. Yeah. And I think, when you can like kind of laugh at it and go, "Oh, that happened. Cool. Love that for me." All right, like on to the next thing. It feels less heavy, right? It doesn't feel
Mhm.
like I could have gotten totally derailed by that free challenge. And, there was a part of me that was, I'm not going to lie, derailed for probably half a day, right? I let myself have that time of like, "Oh, I'm angry, I'm frustrated, this didn't work how I wanted it to." But yet, after a couple hours, I was like, but the sun still rose, I still woke up, and I have another chance to reapproach this differently. And how do I want to do it different next time?
And you
What
help
are,
people.
yeah, right. And I still help people, right? At the end of the day, there were still a number of people who were interested in what I was talking about, who were there for the lives, who were, in my inbox, and we were, hopping on sales calls, and there was still a lot of really great stuff that was happening. So it wasn't a total failure, but there were aspects of it that I could have, you know, let it put me into bed for 3 days crying because this thing didn't work.
Yeah, and it's most of it's in our heads. We
Yeah.
do this to ourselves because nobody else even noticed,
Oh yeah,
honestly.
totally. Totally.
They,
There was one person that noticed, that sent me an email and said, "Hey, I just signed up for that challenge and I got about 5 emails from you all at the same time." And I was like, "Oh,
thank you so much for letting
thank
me
you."
know.
Yeah, that's
Because if
literally
it
what I
happened
said.
to
I was
you,
like,
it happened to everybody else.
right? I was like, "Oh, wow. Thanks. I will go and check that out right now."
I love it when people help me with tech that way.
Yeah,
And tech gets all of us. It's
oh,
not like,
totally.
we're it's just me. I'm the only person who ever has this happen to me. And I think that the more that we can just roll with it and acknowledge that it's gonna happen, it's not your fault. I mean, we cannot possibly hold ourselves responsible for knowing all of the absolutely 9 million different permutations of things that could happen because tech is always changing. And, you know, no matter how many times you practice, something new is going to show up in the
Oh my
works
gosh, yes.
when you get ready to go. Just,
Yes.
just the thing. As I look over and make sure I'm recording.
Yes. Yes.
So Maggie, I know that you offer an alignment session for people so they can just get on the phone with you and chat about what they're doing and how they're doing it and kind of get some guidance. You want to talk a little bit about what you're doing with
Yeah.
that?
Yeah, totally. So I offer free offer alignment sessions. They're about 20 minutes. And we hop on a call and we talk about where you are, where you want to be, and some of the action steps that you've been currently taking, or some of the strategies that you've currently been working with. And a lot of times, I would say 99% of people walk away from that call with, 2 to 3 action items that they can implement that day, right? From me to say, okay, it sounds like, you need a little bit of work on your offer. Maybe you need to fine tune how you're talking about it in order to really speak to your audience. Sometimes it looks like, it looks like you maybe need to post a little bit more in order to gain a little bit more traction. Here are some content ideas or types of content you can post to start generating engagement, offering some value, and then actually like making offers. And I don't mean like just selling to everyone, buy my thing. I mean like inviting people into your group, inviting people to join your email list, inviting people to be on your podcast or whatever that thing is, right? Offers can take the form of like both paid for and free, and you're still making offers. So a lot of people, honestly, most of the time on these offer alignment calls, that's what they need the most help with is how do I talk to people? How do I connect with leads so that they want to talk to me and so that I can sell to them without feeling salesy, right? So I'm not just going into some of these DMs like hoping and praying to all of the things that this person wants to buy. That you're going in with some confidence to say, oh, great, I'm so excited. You commented on my post. I'm so thankful for this connection, like, and have a real conversation so that you can really like bring the human back to what you're doing and say, yeah, I saw you commented on my post about what I do. I would love to hop on a call or send you some voice notes, explain more what I do, and see if we're a fit to work together in some capacity. And that really allows people to kind of come off of this and out of this like bro marketing hustler, right? Like, I know when I started my businesses, like the hustle culture was crazy, right? Everyone was like, oh, I've got my side hustle. I'm a boss babe. I'm a blah, 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 which can be exhausting. So for some people, it works. For others, it doesn't. I don't, I like my business to support my life so that I can be living my life, right? And I know a lot of others want that too. Um, and will there be times that you have to hustle? Yes. Maybe put in some long hours every now and then. Sure. But, at the end of the day, how can you have more conversations that lead to more sales? And that's a lot of what the offer alignment, we talk a lot about that. Like, how many conversations are you having about your business every single day? It doesn't have to be hundreds. Honestly, for me, 3 to 5 conversations about my business every day really keeps my, like leads full. It keeps my, like calendar mostly full or full to the point where I feel satisfied. So that's a lot of what we talk about in the offer alignment call.
And knowing your numbers is another big thing.
Yes, and
How
that's
many people
also
do you
something.
need to reach out to each day
Right. Yeah, for
to make
sure.
your
And
income goals?
yep. And that's something that I get into a lot in a lot of my one-on-one coaching is we dig
Mm-hmm.
into those numbers. We dig into like how much money do you want to make? Right? What are your yearly goals? How much money do you want to make this year? How much overhead do you have? How much do you want to pay yourself? Right? If you want to pay yourself 50% of what you make and you want to make $100,000, well, you need to make $200,000 in a year in order to meet that goal. And there's nothing wrong with that. Absolutely nothing wrong with that. It just means we need to make sure that you are hitting those goals, right? And getting back to how many conversations do you need to have? How many offers can you make? So that people are in your world starting to gain that rapport, gain the know, like, and trust factor. And so that you can then show your audience that you see them, you hear them, you understand them, so that then they're pretty much pre-sold, right? It's not a hard thing for them to say yes, right? They're seeing what you're doing, they're listening to the things, they're hopping on your lives, they're, binging all of your content so that they're ready to be like, oh my gosh, you have an opening. I'm in me, right? And that's really what that's what I help clients do is get to that. So I live in the Midwest, I live in Wisconsin. So a common phrase here where I live is you betcha. So like I like to call them the you betcha clients where it's like, oh, you betcha, I'm in. Here, take my money. Like I want to be next.
It takes about 7 hours of content consumption to get to that point with
Right.
with somebody that they're just like at the end of that amount of content that they've consumed from you, they're like, yeah, I'm getting on this call because I want my credit card sitting right here next to me.
Right.
I'm gonna give it to her.
Mm-hmm.
It's just like I'm gonna see how much she wants.
Right.
How bad is it gonna quiver?
Yes, but I also help clients learn how to like speak some of those numbers so that they're like I had one client who, she started getting on sales calls and she's like, I can't say that number. I can't say that number that I want to charge. And I said, well, okay, what is a number you can say? And it was like way lower. And I was like, okay, we've got to meet like in the right. Like she was charging like I think it was 3K for 3 months. And she was like, I can say 1,500. And I was like, okay, let's work on 2,000, right? Let's work on that. Because again, sometimes the brain needs proof that this will happen. So, we worked through that and she was able to, fairly quickly move from that, like, oh, 1,500 is still a little scary to like, okay, I'm ready to charge 3,000. I understand my worth. I understand that I am worth it. And then after she hit that, I was like, okay, well, now we got to work on the next level. You don't have to change it now, but like always be kind of stepping forward. Again, like you said before, right? Do you want to get off the highway here at this exit and stay here? Yeah, sure you can, but at some point you're going to want to get back on the highway and test out some more, right? So how can we keep kind of pushing those boundaries to see where you're at? Because that's really at the end of the day, if you want to scale your business, you have to increase your prices. I mean, you can certainly take on more people, right? You can do more, but a price increase will bump your numbers up far quicker than taking on
Yes.
the world.
Yeah, it's easier to find two clients for 5,000 a piece to have a 10,000 a month rather than 10 clients for $1,000 a piece.
Right.
Two different demographics too, and the people that pay 5,000 are going to get much better results than the people that pay 1,000.
Right. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
So those are just the basics. So how do people get in touch with you, Maggie?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So I am on Instagram and you can find me at Maggie Lynn with two N's coaching. Or on Facebook, you can find me if you type in Maggie Lynn Olson, you'll find me. I should pop up. And then also my podcast, the Chaos to Clarity podcast, is on a whole bunch of places.
All the places.
Most of the places, right? Apple, Spotify, Pandora. I don't
iHeartRadio.
know. There's a bunch of them. I clicked all the buttons. So pretty much wherever you get your podcast, that should show up. And honestly, the podcast is one of my favorite places to drop tons of just golden business nuggets. I try to do it on Facebook and Instagram, but sometimes, like in Instagram, I love to be in stories. So sometimes there's a lot of little dots up there. And then I realize, like, this is a topic for the podcast. But any of those places, come and find me. I absolutely love to hang out in my DMs. So if you have questions, my DMs are always open. It is me that is answering you. So I don't have anyone, I don't have an appointment set or anything like that in my DMs answering you. It is me. So I would love to connect with anyone who's ready to just chat about where they're at in business.
And your website's maggielynolson.com,
Yes.
and
Yep.
they can reach you there too.
Yeah.
So, what do you hope the audience takes away from this conversation today?
I really hope that they take away that, anything in your business is possible. If you put your mind to it, right? If you adapt and allow yourself to fail and grow and, really just lean into, again, the possibility that this is working for you and it doesn't have to look like the next person, right? You are unique. And that's what's really powerful about this industry, the coaching and content creation and course creation, thought leaders, is that, you really get to let yourself shine in this industry. So if there's anything that they take away, it's just to know that you are so unique and all of your hopes and dreams are so possible.
For sure. Thank you so much for joining me, Maggie. This has been a great conversation.
Yeah, you're
Thank
welcome.
you for
Thank
joining
you.
us for this episode of the You World Order Showcase podcast. Be sure to like the episode and let us know in the comments what your biggest takeaway was. You can support the podcast and grow your business or coaching practice by taking advantage of the tools offered in our store, which you can find at heartlifecoach.com/store. See you next time as we hear from another life, health, or transformational coach being the change they seek in the world.